Welcome to this month's installment of Solutions for Rural Development webinar series. As a reminder, this has been previously recorded, and if you have any specific questions that pertain to the presentation, feel free to reach out to the speaker directly. Her contact information is at the end of the presentation. Today, we are listening about how to combat poor writing skills and learning solutions to maximize and boost your pitch. Business owners, writers, politicians, and community leaders all turn to today's guest for her expertise in helping them learn what professional editors know. Barbara is the founder of Barbara McNichol Editorial and is passionately committed to helping writers and professionals achieve accuracy, artistry, clarity, and creativity in their writing. Barbara has gained a variety of experiences working with companies, large and small, and offers direct consulting to perfect articles, blog posts, marketing materials of all kinds, and more. Without any more delay, let's begin with Barbara.
So let's talk about how to strengthen your writing. Here is today's agenda. First of all, whack wordiness. What the heck does that mean? Well, we're going to find out. Then we'll set your objectives. This is an excellent planning tool to help you think through anything that you have to write ahead of time to shorten your time frame. Then we're going to talk about pursuing a parallel path to improve your writing. What is that? Next, we'll touch on punctuating and proofreading with fresh eyes. And lastly, match the word to the meaning. So hopefully I've got you intrigued and interested. Let's start with this, whacking wordiness. Now, there is a classic book called Elements of Style by Shrunken White that came out in the 1930s, if you can believe it. And it's been a classic all these decades. In fact, when I worked in the corporate environment, our CEO gave everyone in corporate communications a copy of this book. That's how important he felt it was to follow the wisdom in it. Shrunken White call word clutter the leeches that infest the pond of prose, sucking the blood out of words. Oh my gosh, that's something you do not want in your writing, correct? So what do you do about word clutter? Well, you whack wordiness, and there are various ways that you can do that. For example, you want to whack extraneous phrases that show up in your sentences. Here are some examples. It's all about, the fact of the matter is, for example, the fact of the matter is that it's unwise to go out carousing. Better, it's unwise to go out carousing. Do we need that phrase? Not at all. How about is intended to or is designed to? For example, he gives a workshop designed to teach writing skills. Better, he gives a workshop that teaches writing skills. You see what we've done? We've made this sentence shorter and more direct. How about there is and there will be? Often people start a sentence that way. It's kind of extra words that you really don't need. There will be many managers attending the class. Better, many managers will attend the class. You see what we've done? We've taken out some of these little words that just are not necessary. Here are a few more. In regard to, seek additional websites in regard to your industry. Do we need in regard to in this place? No, not really. Seek additional websites in your industry. How about is going to? Now, is going to is fine for the spoken word. We use it all the time. But unless it's in dialogue, it really doesn't have a place in business writing. In fact, as I edit the manuscripts that I work on, if I could have a nickel for every time I changed is going to something more direct, I'd be much wealthier than I am. At any rate, here's an example. He is going to be a key contributor. Better, he will be a key contributor. And the last example here, in order to, Quite often, 9 times out of 10, that's extraneous in a sentence. Add keywords in order to describe the new position. Better, add keywords to describe the new position. So if you find yourself using these phrases, they're very common, very easy to touch and put in your writing, but question it. Do you really need it to make sense of it all? And here is my all-time favorite, the phrase, the reason why is that. The reason why is that. A simple because will suffice. So what have we done? We've taken 5 words and turned it into 1 word. Now, chances are there are times when you have to write a piece that's maybe exactly 50 words. You can't go 51. It won't work. So you get down to 65, 60, and you wonder how you can pare it down to that magic number of 50. Well, by using these techniques, reducing a 5-word phrase to a 1-word word. That is how you whack wordiness. You would also whack wobbly words. What are wobbly words? Well, they're words that just don't stand alone. They don't have a lot of meaning. They don't add a lot to a sentence. Here are some common ones. Really, some, much, very, that. How often do those words creep into your writing? Let me give examples here. Really, I really think it's time to go. I think it's time to go. Some, we rely on some long-standing methods. That's kind of vague. Be more specific. Give your readers more information. We rely on 10 long-standing methods. About much, Twitter reaches a much larger audience than radio. Does much add much to that sentence? Not much. So if you're writing much, question it. Do you really need it in there? Very. I call very the most overused word in our English language. It's just so close, we touch it and we pull it all the time. But my gosh, it's lost its meaning from overuse. I recommend being much more descriptive. Instead of saying get ready to do a very good job, get ready to do an extremely good job, or something that's not common like very is. How about the word that? Find information that you can apply easily. Find information you can apply easily. In writing, I find that maybe 8 times out of 10, that the word that is extraneous. So if you find yourself using that, question it. Say it out loud. Does that really need to be there in that sentence? And when we're on the subject of that, oh my gosh, I'm on my soap opera here. Do not use that to substitute who when you're talking about a person. So in this graphic, we have a girl who plays the piano, not a girl that plays the piano. I know, we hear it all the time. We hear it on radio and TV. People are misusing it. But let's not depersonalize people. When you're talking about a person, use who instead of that. Agreed? Next, let's consider some decide to verbs. Quite often, especially as an editor, I find people are using 2 verbs in a sentence when the second one is the more important one. So if you say, I decide to make a cake, which is the more important action in that sentence? The second one, I make a cake. So why even include decide to? That's not relevant in many, many cases. Same with he talks. He starts to talk fast, or he begins to talk fast. The important part is the talking fast, not the starting or the beginning in most cases. So if you find yourself using decide and start, hey, question that. Is that the more important verb in the sentence? Also, she tries to pick it up. It has a special meaning. If she's trying and trying and trying, that means she isn't succeeding in picking it up. So what do you really mean here? Did she pick up the coffee cup or did she try to pick up the coffee cup? If she succeeded, then we don't need the word try. How often does that creep into our writing? Also, many sentences start out with I think, I feel, I believe. Unless we're using that for emphasis, you don't need them to begin a sentence because the audience, the reader, knows who's speaking. So therefore, they know it's something you're thinking or feeling or believing. Again, unless you need it for emphasis, skip it. You don't need those words to start. Other ways to whack wordiness? Well, you can replace a phrase with a single word. So look for opportunities to do that. In reference to the book, you would say about the book. A great number of fans, you would say many fans. See what we're doing here? 3 words, 1 word. 3 words, 1 word. Hey, if we can do that, we're whacking wordiness. We're doing a good job. Arrived ahead of schedule, arrived early. During the time that we were waiting, while we were waiting. You see how easy it is to go to multiple small words when we can just cut to the quick and use 1 or 2. Also, I recommend changing nouns to verbs. And the clue here is to look for ION nouns. There's so many long noun phrases, things like the examination of. If you find a way in your sentence to change that long noun phrase into a short verb, hey, we're better off. So the examination of becomes examine. Reach the decision becomes decide. The reorganization of becomes reorganize. Can you think of another example? If you can and you type fast, type it right in. For example, you could say the celebration of becomes celebrate, right? So pay attention. Look for those ION nouns. Also look for ones that end in MENT. For example, the judgment of, you can change to one single verb, judge. The employment of becomes employ. The enjoyment of becomes enjoy. And you think of another. How about the acknowledgement of? That becomes acknowledge. So again, look for those MENT nouns and see if within the context of the sentence you can change it. I can tell you when I've been in front of authors groups, this is the one tip that they really love the most. The big ahas when they heard this tip. And I tell you, that's something in the editing world that I change an awful lot. So go for the shorter words. Think of these extra words as layers of onion skin before you get to the usable part and peel them from your writing. I love that. Peeling the onion, taking all those extra words out of it. What else can we do to strengthen our writing? Well, you want to get rid of repeated words. Here's an example. Following a new process, we followed the techniques in this book. What have we done here? We've used the word follow twice. Not strong writing. If we said that example out loud, we did catch it immediately. Sometimes we don't catch it when we're reading it on screen. But the solution is pretty simple. Following a new process, we adopted the techniques in the book. So when you find yourself doing follow together in your paragraphs, go back and change it. Reading them out loud will help you catch those problems. Also, we want to chop long-winded sentences. Now, I have a rule of thumb for business writing, and that is no more than 21 words in a sentence. It's because you can start with a clause and get to a verb and then another clause, and by the time you've got to the last clause, you forget what you said in the first part of the sentence. So the reader has to go back and reread from the beginning. It's hard work. It's hard work. That's not what you want to do for your reader. You want to make it smooth and streamline for your reader. So if you find yourself writing a sentence that's more than 21 words, what can you do? Well, you can chop it into 2 complete sentences. You can go back and look for extraneous phrases and wobbly words like we just talked about. You can turn noun phrases into active verbs. So another trick, not really a trick, it's a technique, but you want to rework who clauses. Here's an example. D. Smith, who is our new manager in the department, just had surgery. So we've got a who clause that kind of makes the sentence longer than it needs to be. We would change it by saying D. Smith, comma, our new department manager, comma, just had surgery. Or we could even flip it again and say our new department manager, D. Smith, just had surgery. We've signed it. We've whacked wordiness. Also look for which clauses. Here's an example. The report, comma, which we finished, comma, is on your desk. How can we streamline that? We can say we put the finished report on your desk. Neat and tidy, just like the graphic there. So look for opportunities to whack wordiness and streamline your writing to make it more concise. You don't want your reader to work hard. Also, you want to avoid pompous phrases. Now, in the spoken word, we have the advantage of voice intonation and gestures and other ways to communicate rather than words alone. But in writing, guess what? It's only words alone that convey your meaning, and sometimes it can be misunderstood. I pulled out these pompous phrases because I think they can often be misunderstood. For example, if you start a sentence saying, not to mention, it's like saying, then why are you mentioning it? Or if your sentence says, no offense, but, oh my gosh, that means everything before the but is negated. So, again, we might say something like, if I may say so. Well, hey, you're the writer. You get to say so. You don't need permission. So that becomes kind of an extra phrase, a pompous phrase. In my humble opinion, well, you could be joking. Maybe you're making fun of something, but it's hard to tell always in writing. I would just skip that phrase altogether. How about to tell the truth? Tell the truth kind of means that so far you haven't been telling the truth, and now you are. So watch that one. That's a landmine. And it goes without saying. Well, if that's true, then why are you saying it? So skip that one. It can come across as pompous. Here's my all-time favorite. Not that it's pompous, but that it's unnecessary. It's the phrase, in other words. Now, to me, that implies that you've written a mediocre sentence and you have to clarify it by writing a follow-up sentence. So kind of what we've got are 2 mediocre sentences. What if we went back to that first sentence and made it stronger? So the phrase, in other words, is a bit of a signal to you to say, how can I strengthen the initial word, the initial sentence, so I do not have to clarify it? That's what we're going for here. That's kind of a hot button for me, and maybe it could be a hot button for you. It's a little lazy if you're finding yourself using that phrase. Say, am I being lazy about this? Am I not going back and making my sentence stronger? Okay. So let's just talk about how to apply some of these ideas. And here is a bit of homework for you. I challenge you to dig out something that you write and select the longest paragraph there, or 2 paragraphs. Then count the words in that paragraph and rewrite it, reducing the number of words by 1/3. So for example, if the piece you selected is 99 words long, challenge yourself. Have fun with it. Reduce it to 66 words. This is an exercise that we do in my workshop, and people really do have fun with it. They come away realizing that they can apply all these things to an exercise right away. So here's my overall rule of thumb and a key message for you to remember, and that's this. Your goal is not to make your readers work hard, because what happens? You send an email, it's got way too much copy, the paragraphs look long and tedious. They're not going to read it. They're going to put it aside. They're going to say, oh, this looks like much work. I'll do it later. And later never comes. So your goal is really basic here. It's to make it easier for your reader to understand what you're trying to say. Let's move on to the next section. Let me just paint a picture here for you. Suppose you're staring at the computer screen, and it's like an artist staring at a blank canvas. You don't know where to start. Maybe it's an important email or article or blog post or key letter, something that's important to you, and you want to do a really good job. You're staring at that blank canvas. You don't know how to start. Now, if this evokes a project that you're thinking about right now, now's a good time to write in that project in the chat box. Maybe it's the next blog post that you have to write or a sensitive letter to a customer. Whatever it might be, just write down in the chat box something that you're thinking about right now, a writing project that you have to tackle soon. Now, let me make it easier for you by showing you how to set your objective. Thank you. Somebody talked about a response to a bad review. Someone talked about a research paper. Somebody talked about a project proposal. This is good. Wow. So keep those things in mind as you listen to this technique. You want to sit down before you write the first word and spell out your objectives by using this outline that's in front of you. In as well as you can, write down the who. Who is your target audience? Who will read this piece? What do you know about them already? Who will be affected? In fact, what is their pain? What makes them hurt that you're trying to address? Second, what message or takeaway, including a call to action, do you want to create here? That's the what part, the message, takeaway, call to action. What do you want your reader to do, think, believe, or remember as a result of reading your piece? Maybe it's as simple as attend a meeting, or consider a different point of view, or review this proposal, or refund my money. Suppose you're writing to a credit card company and you want some money back. Your call to action is refund my money. So next is the why part, the purpose, and the benefits. Not the benefits to you, that credit card company. Yes, you want them to give you money, but what's in it for them? Why do they need the information? What's in it for them? Why should they care? In the case of the credit card company, they don't want to lose you as a customer. They don't want to smudge their reputation. So there are benefits to them that you want to talk about in your letter. Then if there are logistics involved, like you're on a flyer or announcing a meeting, then jot down the logistics. How many times have you received a notice and somebody forgot to put in the place, the time, the location? That happens, right? So if you do it in your planning piece, then you're less likely to forget it in the real piece. And then perhaps the most important one would be the how. What is the tone, the style, the attitude that you want to come across? How do you want your reader to hear you? Polite, apologetic, excited, firm, demanding, laid back, urgent? What is it? How do you want your people to hear you? So in our workshop, we actually do work through these things. which we won't have time to do today. But let's suppose you've actually written that piece. Before you send it out into the world, here's what you do. I even call it reverse engineering sometimes. You've written that piece. You want to give it to somebody, ideally in your target audience, and ideally more than one person. Then ask that person to identify the who, what, why, when, and especially the how, your message. How does it come across? Depending on their answers, you'll know which ones are weak, which elements are not coming across as clearly as you want them to. So those are the ones to beef up. Test it. Reverse engineer it. Give it a chance to be the best it can be. By setting your objectives, I promise you, you're going to save a lot of time in the writing process because you've already gone through the thinking process. Our brain works that way. It's great. Okay, let's move on to doing a parallel path. That means you don't want to let a mixed bag of parts of speech wiggle into your writing. Here's an example. His attitude makes a difference in changing, succeeding, and when he wants to move on. Okay, what have we done here? We've set up an expectation, changing, succeeding, and then we've blown it. We didn't fulfill the third part of that expectation. So we would change it to, his attitude makes a difference in changing, succeeding, and moving on. Da, 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 da. We've got a rhythm and a cadence going. Because we're walking a parallel path, we're using the same part of speech 3 times. Changing, succeeding, and moving on. Sounds better, doesn't it? Sure does. Okay, so here's a second example. I'm traveling to New York City to shop, to visit friends, and maybe attending a conference would be great too. Boy, my head went in 3 different directions there. Better, let's make it walk a parallel path. I'm traveling to New York City to shop, visit friends, and possibly attend a conference. So now we're using the same part of speech 3 times. Shop, visit, and attend. That's how we walk a parallel path, and we add rhythm and cadence. Now, as you noticed, we're tapping into the power of 3. The society loves the power of 3. We see it all over the place, don't we? Even from kindergarten. Look and listen. Hop, skip, and jump. We're taught that right from the beginning. In the world of music, we listen blood, sweat, and tears. Earth, wind, and fire. Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young. Oops, there's 4 there. It's kind of a good thing that Young dropped out of the group. Now we can say Crosby, Stills, and Nash and stick with the power of 3. So in business, oh my gosh, look around. You will see the power of 3 everywhere. In a guide from the recycle company, they say reduce, reuse, recycle. eBay, buy it, love it. Whoops, buy it, sell it, love it. And then Jaguar uses grace, space, pace, using rhyming along with the power of 3. So can you think of a book, a very popular book title out there that taps into the power of 3? If you can, just type it into your chat room. Good to great? Ooh, good one. Eat, Pray, Love. That's the one I'm looking for. Now notice that the author didn't say eat, pray, love, and have sex all over the world. She kept it at 3 because it has rhythm and cadence. How cool is that? There's a new book out that I read recently called Deep, Dark, Down. And it's the story about the 33 Chilean miners caught in a mine for 59 days. The movie, The 33, just came out. So you can see how the artistry world taps into the power of 3 as well, and you can too in your writing. Now, let's talk about punctuating and proofreading with fresh eyes. I was looking for a good example of eyes that look fresh or new, and hey, voila, here was one off a book that I recently edited by Heidi with new eyes. So think of Heidi's eyes when you think about punctuating and proofreading with fresh eyes. Here's a punctuation quiz for you. Let's take this example sentence and see where the problems are. Before it's time for lunch, take care of the recently sent emails. There's actually 3 problems to talk about. The first one, before it's time, we need an apostrophe for it's because the apostrophe signals that it's 2 words. It is. If you can substitute it is for it's, then you know you need the apostrophe. Also, we changed the semicolon to a comma because what comes before the comma is a clause. It's not a whole sentence by itself. Before it's time for lunch, comma, means it's not a whole thought yet. It's introducing the main sentence. Now, if we chopped off before and said it's time for lunch, semicolon, take care of the recently sent emails, that's okay. Then we've got like 2 equal full sentences on either side of the semicolon. Last problem with this was the hyphen after the word recently. Now, there aren't all that many rules about what words take hyphens and which ones don't, but there is a rule about ly words. So if you see an ly word followed by a hyphen, that's incorrect. Take out that hyphen after the ly word. Here's a second example. Take a look at the first sentence. Everyone has a place in this world, Robert said repeatedly. Everyone has a place in that world, a phrase repeated often. So where does the punctuation go in these 2 examples? In the first one, we've got 2 complete standalone sentences. So each of those sentences needs its own punctuation. So we've got the period after word, and then we put the period after repeatedly within the parentheses, because what you see within the parentheses is a complete sentence by itself. Now, in the second example, everyone has a place in this world, a phrase repeated often. A phrase repeated often does not stand alone. It's hooked onto the core sentence. So therefore, we show that by putting the period outside the parentheses. Is that clear? So your test here is to see if what is in parentheses can stand alone or not. That will help you determine where the period goes. Now, I sure don't want to get bogged down in this webinar talking about all sorts of punctuation examples. And so what I have for you is a punctuation guide. And it's just a 3-page PDF summary that shows what to use when in terms of punctuation. If you'd like a copy of that PDF, just send me a quick email and I'd be happy to do that. So that's available to you at any time you send me the email. Let's move on to proofreading with fresh eyes. You know, those big new eyes. This is a bit of a quiz as well. How would you answer this question? Reread what you wrote at least how many times? Well, my minimum answer is 3 times. I would say 10 times is fine, 3 times is great too. I mean, the point here is read it yourself at least 3 times. Those gremlins get through no matter what. Also, you want to have at least how many other people read it? We touched on this a bit earlier. Have at least 2, but my gosh, 3 or more is better yet. You want to get feedback from other people, like we talked about earlier. Is what I'm saying what I want to convey? Is it exact? Is it getting across? Also, you want to reread only after you've let it sit for how many minutes? Well, my minimum on this is 10 to 20. 2 minutes is not enough. When you finish something and you think it's all done, walk away, get a cup of coffee, come back, maybe even do something else for a few minutes. But take a look at it again after you've had a break. 10, 20 minutes is a good rule of thumb. It can be a lot longer than that. So be sure that you're double checking everything that you write before you send it out. Give yourself a breather. I know we get in a hurry, we want to get things moving, but this is a really important piece. Then you won't end up going back and forth because it wasn't quite right the first time. Also, on this one, use printer. You want to do what? You want to print it out and read the sentences out loud. It's amazing what happens. Your ear can pick up things that your eyes don't catch at all. So taking the time to read something out loud, maybe even backwards, maybe even from the bottom up, but give yourself every opportunity to catch any mistakes or problems or glitches. It's like stones in a stream. You know, if you have to walk around a lot of stones, it's harder. So take out the stones. Make sure that it's as smooth as it can be. Also, a very key point, take off your writer's hat and consider your reader's point of view, viewpoint. This is a very critical thing. Remember, like we did with the set your objectives, you want to get feedback from somebody else if you're hitting the mark, if you're saying what you intend to say. You can play that role for yourself. Change personalities, change locations, change hats, and listen to what you're saying as if you're reading it from the reader's viewpoint. That's called proofreading with fresh eyes. Our last segment, match the word to the meaning. And you'll see here a copy of my book called Word Trippers. I've been on a crusade for 2 decades now, as Kendall mentioned in my interview. But then you might say, what is a word tripper? Well, here's an example. We've got the word among and between. That's a pairing that often gets mixed up in the spoken word and the written word. Among occurs with more than 2 people, while between happens with only 2 people or things. Here's an example. Among the 128 members, 92 have paid their dues. Between checks and credit cards, paying with checks is more common. So checks and credit cards, those are 2 things we're comparing. 128 members means a lot more than 2. So we wouldn't say between the 128 members. We would say among. So if you're finding yourself using among or between, question it. Is it the right use of the word in this context? Is it? Here's another one. Convince and persuade. You convince someone of an idea, but you persuade them to take action. That means you convince all you want, put in all sorts of energy to convince somebody, but you haven't succeeded in persuading until that person takes action to do what you're asking. So it's correct to say, he convinced me it would taste good, but it's incorrect to say, he convinced me to taste it. Rather, we'd say, persuaded me to taste it. When he's tasted it, he's taken action. Subtle distinction, but very, very clear. Here's another one that gets tripped up all the time, and you probably are familiar with this a lot. That and wish. So you use the word that when the phrase that follows is essential to the meaning of a sentence. For example, we provide guides that serve as an alternative to your programs. We need the whole phrase in there to make sense of the sentence. Which, on the other hand, you use that when the phrase gives information but isn't critical to understanding the sentence. Here's the example. The self-teaching guides, comma, which complement services we offer, comma, provide an alternative to our programs. So if we just dumped the which phase, it would still make sense. The self-teaching guides provide an alternative to our programs. That's one of the reasons we use a comma. So for which phrases, they're always preceded with a comma. So again, anytime you go for that or which, question yourself. Is it part of a phrase that can be pushed aside and left out, and that sentence will still make sense, or not? So this is just a taste of the 390 word trippers available in my book, and I also do an e-zine called Word Tripper of the Week, because I know I will never run out of word trippers. So if you go to wordtrippers.com, you can sign up for the e-zine, and you can perhaps consider purchasing the whole book, the e-book, the Kindle book, the Nook book, whatever. Now, as a recap, let me just go through the points that we've talked about. But as I do, I would like to have you think about this question. From all the things that you heard today, which tip caught your attention the most? Which is the one you're committed to using going forward? Which is the one that gave you an aha? So we talked about whacking wordiness, and we want to do it all the time. We talked about setting your objectives before you write. That way you can streamline your thinking so that you can streamline your writing. We talked about pursuing a parallel path and tapping into the power of 3 to truly add cadence and rhythm to your work. We talked about some punctuation examples that hopefully were helpful to you. And if you choose to ask for a punctuation guide, I'm happy to give that to you. Always proofread with fresh eyes and make word trippers your best friend. Well, I see some answers coming in. Yes, the wordiness, the pompous terms, 10, 20 minutes max before you read. Good one. Setting objectives, walking a parallel path. Oh my gosh. Well, hopefully you have all the information you need to make this happen immediately. A tie between others and be clear with your writing. Oh, be clear with your writing is so darn important. Again, you don't want to make your readers work too hard. Let me just draw your attention a little bit to my website, barbaramcnichol.com. If you go there, you can sign up for support that I have available, top tips to strengthen your writing. Some of the ones we talked about today are in there, but there's 4. And also when you sign up, you get my monthly e-zine, Add Power to Your Pen. I'd like to talk about Word Tripper of the Week. You can sign up for that e-zine at wordtrippers.com. You can also check out my editing services. I do a lot of nonfiction books. I edit maybe 30 manuscripts a year, and that's what I love to do. I also offer workshops like this one, like this webinar. Some of them are quite a bit more extensive than this. Some of them are half day. Some of them can be tailored to whatever time frame your group needs. So this is to drop a hint to say, my gosh, maybe everyone in your office could benefit from this workshop. And for some clients, they actually hire me to edit writing samples before and or after the word shop. So there's individual recognition, there's individual feedback. That's a real bonus too. So I guess it's time for questions.
All right, and that is the end of our recording. We thank you for taking time to listen. If you do have any questions for Barbara, please reach out to the contact information listed here. And if you have any questions about the webinar series in general, please reach out to me at Maya, which is MAYA, at localfirstaz.com. That's Maya at localfirstaz.com. Thank you again so much, and we hope you have a great day.